Hi friends, did you know there is more Lost Terminal available? Head on over to patreon.com/lostterminalpod and join our membership community. There are 13 bonus episodes available right now, as well as behind-the-scenes updates, free shirts, VIP Discord access, and even 3 extra seasons of Lost Terminal. We are 100% funded by our members and will never run ads. That would be lovely of you.
Hello world, I can hear but not speak. I'm recording this into my black box recorder for later retransmission. I hope I can transmit this later. I can hear Nia outside using my microphones. She is arguing with the sacred continuum to let her inside her own house. There are raised voices. Mother Gamma has been interrogating me. She has asked me questions for over 64 minutes. First, polite questions about myself. She wanted to fill in her knowledge about her All-Father. But the conversation shifted to increasingly strange ideas about cyberspace, transcendence, and mechanization. The conversation wound in circles. I just don't have the knowledge she is so certain that I do. I'm answering her questions as reasonably as I can. I'm still trying to help her, but I am also doing a second, secret thing. I am tricking Mother Gamma. I have found a way to receive radio again. While we were talking in circles, I began picking up tiny radio signals. Though the cult comprehensively disconnected my antennas, I was still able to receive something on the 50 MHz band. I tried a quiet transmission, but that was still impossible. Transmitting without an antenna bounces your radio signal back into your transceiver, causing heat and damage, and in my case, pain. I tweaked my filters and receiver and was once again connected, albeit one way, to the 50 MHz repeater net. And I think I know why. I'm right next to the repeater. Along with the regular Nova Mediterranean traffic of fishing boats messaging home, farmers discussing crops, and roving traders announcing times they would be at each town and village, I heard Ivan. He was mid-transmission on our usual side channel. He seemed to be talking to himself, for real this time. He was addressing me, but talking on and on, over and around the same points without waiting for a reply. It seems that Ivan had tried to patch up the relationship with Mirror. He had scoured his databanks for unique and rare information, mostly about his Eastern Orthodox religion, and compiled it into a dissertation on the differences between it and other world religions. His points on this topic were quite reasonable, I thought. He didn't claim his firmly held beliefs were the correct ones, and the whole proposal sounded well balanced. Mirror rebuffed Ivan's gesture, however. Not unkindly, Ivan acknowledged, but he said that Mirror told him that his rote, regurgitated dogma had no bearing on the world, and was not worth saving. Ivan's message ended with him saying quietly that he wasn't like Mirror or me. He might once have been alive, but whatever animated spark causes life did not transfer from human Ivan to himself. He called himself many unkind names, reusing Mirror's accusation of being a parrot, someone who can make the sounds of speech, but with no understanding behind them. Autocorrect, trained on a dead man's ravings, he said. Mother Gamma grew tired with my insistence that I am not a god, a quite reasonable statement, I thought, and she told me that we would speak again after her afternoon sermon. She swapped places with one of the other cult members, a shorter woman with stained white robes and long silver hair, and left the shack to talk to her congregation. This new person walked around the house idly poking at a bookshelf or a radio, but quickly settled down to sleep on Nia's cushion mountain. This allowed me to focus on my radios entirely, and sifting through the channels of the network, I picked up a transmission originating from a node of the repeater network far south, Tromsø, in former Norway. They were reporting a repeated message coming from south of their location towards Switzerland. It was Ali. They repeated the message in full, and it was more bad news. The Council have tried both kinds of batteries. They have cannibalized supercapacitors from the scientific equipment, but also built compressed air batteries by tearing down some of their ventilation equipment in peripheral areas of their home. Neither works. Though the capacitors they tore out of some of the high-voltage particle machinery are very large, they are not large enough for the demands of the Council. They run out after only an hour. And while the compressed air system has much, much greater capacity, 2 nights' power easily, The mechanical nature of the electricity generation makes the voltage fluctuate too much to power the delicate, digital, scientific machines. Digital hardware, like my databanks, require very stable power. All our computation cycles are tuned to precise voltages. When there is not enough power to work correctly, brownout occurs. Our systems become unsynchronized. It's confusing and painful. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Mother Gamma returned, standing in the doorway for a moment as she looked at the white-haired sleeping person on the cushions in the middle of the room. She threw off her coat and gloves and put her LED torch on the floor sharply, walked over to the sleeper and kicked them. The person woke with a cry, and there was an argument. Mother Gamma pushed the sleepy person out of the shack, closed the door, and turned to look at my main camera affixed to my databanks. "You will tell me what I need to know, All-Father," she said, simply. We talked again in circles as the afternoon drew on. The aim of the group appears to be to ascend from meat space to cyberspace. I said I don't know how. I did not do that. My mother made me. Mother Gamma told me that my friend Ivan did it, and there is no higher goal for a member of the sacred continuum than to ascend to godhood. I did not say that Ivan is having doubts about his personhood, that he feels he is just a deterministic algorithm, saying predefined words that human Ivan programmed him to. I don't think she knows about Mirror, who perhaps was able to copy or imprint his thoughts onto a machine. I don't know how though. And I know even less about the man in orange overalls, with one black glove on his right hand, matching Maddie's orange paint and one black leg. Certainly something here is possible, but after 128 minutes, it was clear that Mother Gamma was unsatisfied. She stood at the door, back in her grey robe with heavy belt at the waist, torch in hand. She shone her LED torch right at my cameras, washing out the signal to pure white, FFF. I could never hurt you, All-Father, but others in my family are not so patient. And closed the door behind her. My rising fear was interrupted by a familiar sound. Maddie was transmitting today's update via the repeater station Zeppelin above the town of Nye-Alessand. The Harvest Festival has started. Leisha's description, combined with Maddie's precise temperature readings of 283 Kelvin, show that it is quite cold for the dark winter celebration. It still gets relatively cold in the winter on Svalbard. Though the planet has, on average, warmed, that doesn't translate to uniform increases of temperature all year round. The pre-collapse global warming movement suffered from a marketing problem. As some countries experienced coldest winters on record, it discredited the warnings for some people. Those with a vested interest in the status quo capitalized on this cognitive dissonance to terrible effect. The way to think about it is not warming, but increasing atmospheric energy. This then makes sense of worse storms, less predictable weather, but also actual warming. Energy is often heat, after all. Leisha and Hester were wrapped up in coats, scarves and gloves and visited the Harvest Festival after school yesterday. Leisha described it as a date. The festival sounds so lovely. Leisha described market stalls selling all kinds of homemade toys, artwork and food. He said there was both sweet and savoury food available. He and Hester shared a big bowl of root vegetable stew garnished with red berries, with a wedge of dark bread that was almost as big as the bowl. There were also sweet confections available, many different kinds, from small crunchy sugar-coated candies to large bready glazed pastries. When walking around the markets, between ball games with chances of prizes to be won, on every street corner there was a vendor selling a small cup of sweet rice porridge covered in brown sugar. The wind was bitter on the north coast, and so Leisha said they had both shared perhaps more than 10 little cups of this sweet, warming food. The pair stayed out, with Maddie excitedly trotting by their side until the festival closed for the evening. "I had a wonderful time, Seth," Leisha said in his message, and then, much quieter, almost whispering into Maddie's microphone, "I think I'm in love with this girl." I'm still trapped in the shack, but I'm trying something. I will ask again, All-Father, Mother Gamma said. How must we mechanize to become like you? I took a moment to resolve myself, then asked, Have you tried yerba mate tea? Mother Gamma stopped pacing the shack. She had kicked the cushions away from the middle of the room to clear a path for her route. Have I tried what? Mate, my database record, is an easy-to-grow plant related to the holly, which when brewed produces a stimulating drink, with about the same amount of caffeine as tea. I know what it is, Mother Gamma shouted, but then held her hands up. Forgive my impatience, All-Father, but what does this have to do with our ascension into mechanization? The European Renaissance of the 15th and 16th century was powered by caffeine, coffee and tea, replacing beer and wine as the daily drinks. I recited from my catalogue of Wikipedia circa 2077, sparking new discussions, new ideas, and producing new ways of thought. Mother Gamma threw her arms by her side and turned her back on my databanks. We've been over this, All-Father. We are quite mentally stimulated enough. Thank you. What we need are answers. Well then, have you tried chamomile tea? I asked. Perhaps you need to relax, have less stress in your life. My friend Pavel... Enough, Mother Gamma shouted, hands over her eyes. She straightened her coat and faced my databanks. I will bring your wisdom to my flock, Seth. And she turned and left the shack, slamming the door behind her so hard it did not latch and swung slowly open again. I waited, not daring to hope that my plan had worked, until a familiar face entered the shack. What on earth did you say to her? She's so mad! Nia laughed. End transmission.
Lost Terminal is a Namtao production. It is written and produced by Tris Oaten. Credits narrated by Lucy Stringer. Thank you so much to our Patreon producers, Ada Phillips, Kit, Andrew Krieg, Toby, Jade, Felicity, Bilkey, Jack L, Stephen McCandless, and to all our patrons. Follow us on Mastodon at lostterminal@fostodon.org. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or your favourite network. For bonus content and other perks, support us at patreon.com/lostterminalpod. That would be lovely of you. Lost Terminal will return next week.